How is the biology of the creeper built? What can the scenes where he regrows his own head tell us? What details should we pay attention to in the scenes where the characters inflict physical damage on him, and what is he after all? The answers to these and other fascinating questions about the creeper are in this video, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel and support it with your activity. It really means a lot to me. When we hear the phrase horror monster, we usually imagine something familiar: a vampire, a werewolf, a zombie, and so on. Each of them has its own legend, its own weaknesses, its own rules. But the creeper is something else entirely, because we still don't know what this creature actually is. He wakes up once every 23 years for 23 days, analyzes the smell of fear to choose his victims, and eats their body parts to keep himself alive. This monster is the ultimate predator, literally rebuilding himself out of what he eats. The films never tell us where he came from. There isn't a single scene where someone explains his true nature. Even in the third film, where the characters receive a vision of his past, nothing is revealed, except maybe he's very ancient and we'd better off not knowing. Which means all we can do is examine the fascinating details of his anatomy and behavior shown in the films to at least partially understand what this creature is and how it functions at all. In this video, we'll try to do just that. We'll go through the most brutal scenes involving the creeper, look at his wounds, regeneration, anatomy, and try to figure out what all this tells us about his nature and biology. This whole story began when Dari and Trish were just driving down an empty road on their way home. A regular country highway, boring landscapes, nothing special. Until their car was rudely overtaken by an old rusty truck with a license plate "Be Eating You" and a driver who looked like he had just crawled out of hell. He nearly ran them off the road. Then they see this strange guy dumping something suspicious into a large pipe leading to the basement of an abandoned church. And that's where the real nightmare begins. At the bottom of the pipe, Dari finds an entire hall where the walls and ceiling are decorated with human bodies like a mosaic, as if it's some twisted version of the Sistine Chapel. It's a horrifying collection of mummified and stitched together corpses. That's when Dari realizes that he and his sister are not dealing with a regular psycho, but something else entirely. This isn't just the creepy hobby of a maniac, this is also a trophy room. And as we later find out, the number of the creeper's victims in this place alone is over 300. The creeper will stalk the heroes, but not just because they have become unwanted witnesses. He has a special interest in one of them. The creeper attacks the police officers escorting Dari and Trish, and they witness him sniffing the severed head of a cop with disturbing hunger, before finally devouring his tongue. The heroes manage to hit the creeper with their car and run him over several times, causing massive injuries including broken bones, the loss of limbs, and damage to one of his wings. Yes, the monster can fly, which shocks the heroes even more. As a result of being run over, the creeper loses an arm and a leg, which seems a bit implausible for this kind of trauma. But the film clearly shows that the creeper's flesh looks necrotic in many places. Earlier we saw that the marks he left on the hero's car were actually flakes of his dead skin. This means the creeper loses limbs from being hit by the car precisely because his body parts, like much of his flesh, are dead tissue that has lost its elasticity. The film reinforces this idea in later scenes. And no matter how necrotic his flesh appears, it's clear that this cannot kill him. The creature is visibly distressed, but mostly from the loss of limbs rather than pain itself. Soon the protagonists meet a psychic named Giselle who reveals a few fundamental details about the creature. It awakens every 23rd spring and hunts for 23 days before returning to hibernation. It feeds on human organs and body parts to keep its own body functioning. As the film shows, the creeper's body parts die off on their own over time. To keep his lungs working, he must consume someone's lungs. To keep seeing, he must eat someone's eyes, and so forth. The same applies when he needs to regenerate lost limbs. That's why he later breaks into the police station and eats the arm and leg of a prisoner. The purpose of the creeper's 23-day hunting cycle is to consume all the body parts he needs to maintain his survival. Roughly speaking, over those 23 days, he must consume the equivalent of an entire human body, but it's not that simple. Not every person can become his donor, and not every organ from every person will be compatible. To analyze donor compatibility, the creeper uses the fear emitted by his potential victim. Fear tells him everything everything he needs to know about them on a biological level. Often, the Creeper cannot immediately determine if someone is a suitable donor, and that's why he may stalk and terrify them for a long time. The more fear a victim feels, the more readable they become to him.
And now he even knows my name!
This is exactly what happened to the protagonists of the first film. The Creeper cannot immediately decide whether the brother or sister is a better match. In the end, it's likely he chooses Derry because Derry experiences more fear than his sister, making him more understandable to the Creeper as a donor. Having regained his strength after feeding, the Creeper grabs Derry and, opening his iconic membranous hood around his head for psychological effect for now, leaves the police station with his victim. Soon we learn that what the Creeper really wants from Derry are his eyes. It's also possible that the Creeper took Derry's brain. At least in the fourth film, the reboot, we are shown that the Creeper eats other people's brains. Although for me the reboot is a completely different story, and honestly for the purposes of this video I'd prefer to stay away from it. In my opinion, the reboot gives the Creeper's origin a clearly supernatural twist. Still, I might make a couple of references to the reboot later. Of course, the Creeper didn't just take Derry's eyes. Later we learn what else he did with the remains of his body. And judging by Derry's screams that we heard earlier in the abandoned factory, he died a slow and painful death right in the process of having his eyes removed or his head cut open. Yes, we've already been shown that the Creeper keeps his victims alive for as long as possible, and this isn't just the nightmarish aspect of his twisted hobby. The longer the victim lives, the more fear they produce, making themselves more open to the monster. So we recalled some of the most striking moments of the first film, and can we assume that the Creeper is not a paranormal being, not a demon, not a fallen angel or anything like that, but a creature whose biology can be explained from a science fiction perspective? Let's say he's an ancient mutant or even an organism of extraterrestrial origin. I think yes. The Creeper's abilities, as shown in the film, could be seen as the result of an evolutionary leap. In some cases it's a bit of a stretch, but still. Scanning organs by the smell of fear, adrenaline, cortisol, and sweat can reveal not only emotions but the state of the body itself. The Creeper acts like a biological scanner, determining whose organs are healthier and more compatible, similar to how mosquitoes choose a tasty victim by skin odor, or how sharks sense blood in the water. And of course, when talking about the Creeper's hypersensitive sensory system, we understand that it may be an advanced sensory system similar to that of bats, from which he has taken so much. Consuming organs to regenerate the body, he eats the specific organ or body part he needs to acquire the biological building material. Think of axolotls to regenerate limbs, and anglerfish where the male's and female's tissues fuse together, becoming one organism. Hibernation and sleep cycles. Many animals do this, and some cicada species emerge from hibernation only once every 17 years to go through a brief period of activity before disappearing again. In short, almost everything we see in the Creeper exists to some degree in nature, and we can even give a semi-scientific explanation for his need to cyclically replace body parts. His cells, as a result of their frantic regeneration, which we'll also see demonstrated later, divide far too quickly, and the tissue resource is exhausted much faster than in ordinary creatures. Because of this, the old tissues gradually lose their viability. Then, chronologically, we have the third movie, since its events take place between the events of the first film and the second. However, I'll come back to it later, and explain why. The second movie showed us quite a lot of interesting things, including many more scenes of the Creeper flying. In the air, he's very agile and surprisingly maneuverable. By the way, you may have noticed that the integrity of his wings is almost always damaged. I'm talking specifically about the membrane. This does not really affect his agility in the air. First and foremost, it's a visual effect that enhances the monster's image, but it is also an intriguing biological detail. After all, wings are the one part of the Creeper's body that has no analog in the human body. Therefore, it is the hardest thing for the Creeper to fully regenerate. For most of the movie, the Creeper terrorizes teenagers in a school bus, selecting new donors from among them. And there is very little time left until the end of his current hunting cycle. Here, we are shown very clearly how his main organ for analyzing victims works, the one located on his nose. We also learn that he has already managed to make throwing weapons and more from Derry's remains, which we understand from this tattoo. Yes, another fervent hobby of the Creeper is making weapons out of the remains of his victims, sometimes combined with other materials, sometimes entirely from the flesh of his victims. The most memorable moments of the film are, of course, connected with his head. One of the girls from the boss manages to pierce his head with a rod. As a result, the creeper cannot simply pull it out of his head. To get rid of this rod, he tears it out together with a piece of his head, and this does not go without consequences for him. Here we are shown that the creeper's head is the most vulnerable part of his anatomy. Jumping ahead a bit, later one of the characters will inflict extensive damage to the vital organs in his torso without any consequences for the creeper. Yes, damaging his brain will not kill him either, but it can cause him temporary difficulties and slow him down, which will also be confirmed in the third movie. When his brain is injured, he loses coordination, his cognitive abilities suffer, and he cannot fly properly. By the way, in these frames we see that his brain is already due for an upgrade. So most likely he didn't take Dary's brain for himself a few days ago after all. But still, the creeper has enough residual brain activity to outsmart the hostages on the boss and take the head of one of them, which, as we understand, he will hurry to devour. The creeper decides not only to restore his brain, but to renew his entire head. To do this, he tears off his old head, detaching it both from the neck and from the membranous hood that holds it at the back of his skull. In these frames, we understand why the creeper chose to replace the entire head. The tissues inside the head, or at least the neck, already look necrotic, so the time has clearly come. By the way, not all of the creeper's flesh looks necrotic. Later, we'll see that he has something resembling blood, which is absent in these shots. And just like Leonard Betts from the X-Files, his new head begins to form inside his body, gradually rising to the neck and taking its rightful place as the new head. At first, the face is the face of the donor, but soon the head takes on the familiar appearance of the creeper. And even here, I will not rush to conclude that the creeper's nature is demonic. After all, I just drew a parallel with Leonard Betts, and that was pure science fiction. Let's recall that in the novelization of the episode, we learned that Betts had performed similar acts many times. He shed his old head like a hood, and a new one, in a horrifyingly painful way, emerged, tearing through the throat and all tissues in its path. Betts did this for two possible reasons: either to create a copy of himself, or because he needed to renew his tissues. Neither the novelization nor the show gave a direct answer. In other words, almost exactly what the creeper is doing. Mulder concluded that Leonard Betts was the result of reactive evolution that turned cancer into a tool of evolution. And what if Betts now possesses regeneration that no other living creature is capable of? Mulder also understood why Betts' body, even with its head severed, was still capable of making decisions. And I'm not talking about the spinal cord, but about a special energetic aura that carries the information about Betts' entire body. Link to the video about Betts is at the end of this one.
It isn't dead.
And what if the creeper also belongs to the category of such mutants? These scenes of growing a new head hint that in order to regrow any other organ, one that has simply become defective rather than lost, the creeper must first remove it so that the new one can grow in its place. Again, this was shown to us in the fourth movie. To grow a new arm, the creeper first tore off his old one. But perhaps this approach only applies to the head, since the creeper's brain, again, is a particularly important organ. What's also interesting is that from these scenes we understand that even more problems can be created for the creeper by destroying his jaw. Without a jaw, it would be much harder for him to devour someone's needed body part. Although it's possible he would simply push it straight into the esophagus. Sometimes it even seems that he doesn't chew his food at all. At the end of the movie, the creeper flies through a vehicle, once again losing parts of his limbs, and finally takes a harpoon straight to the head. This is not enough to kill him, just as numerous stab wounds to his torso are not fatal, but the time for hibernation has come, and his body enters another 24-year slumber. Here we understand that the main function of his biological hood is to protect his head during hibernation, which once again tells us that the head is the most significant and vulnerable part of his biology. After all, to find a replacement head, at least some remains of his old one are needed to allow him to think at all. Though for Betts, this wouldn't have been a problem at all, and I think the creeper would probably manage to. In the first movie, we were given hints that the creeper, in his own way, values his privacy and tries to destroy the evidence of his crimes. But here, knowing that he has only minutes left before hibernation, he doesn't bother to retreat to a hiding place and continues hunting until the very last moment, ultimately falling into the hands of the father of one of his victims. That doesn't seem very prudent, and the creeper is far from stupid. Either this is a plot hole, or the creeper simply did not finish collecting the required number of organs, which might be fatal for him. And perhaps now he will never wake up from this hibernation. For now, we do not know. The third movie shows us what happened between Darry's death and the attack on the school bus. First, we learn that the Creeper's famous truck, the one he mainly uses to transport bodies, is practically a marvel of his engineering genius. It is packed with traps, impervious to heavy-caliber weapons, and most importantly, it seems to have a mind of its own. It seems to be able to hunt even when its master is not around. But the main plot point is the Creeper's mysterious hand, which he lost during the last hunting cycle 23 years ago. Now he's searching for his hand because it seems eager to reveal to others the secret of his origin. Quite literally. A secret that's apparently meant to help his enemies destroy him. Yes, that's exactly how it is, and it is all rather strange. We, the audience, are told no secrets about the monster's origin, and it doesn't seem that the main characters learn anything useful either. Yeah, the plot of the movie is exactly what it is often criticized for. Why does the Creeper's hand want to reveal his secrets to people? This is also never explained. Nor is it explained whether other lost body parts, like his head, would be capable of doing the same thing. Perhaps they could, but apparently the hand is the part of the body that can physically establish tactile contact with a person. Maybe so, we just don't know. What is clear, however, is that the Creeper's very nature is trying to rebel against him. Even his own essence seems to understand that a creature like him has no place in this world. He should not exist. Yes, I saved the third movie for last, despite the chronological order, because it gives us the strongest argument for the Creeper's otherworldly, demonic nature. The film also shows us a mystical connection between him and his weapons. Yes, science fiction is closer to me in spirit, which is why I tried to interpret the origin of the Creeper from this perspective. But if we look at all three movies objectively, the Creeper is ultimately a demonic being. And there is one simple explanation for that. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that there are scenes where we see the Creeper's blood or something like it. And from this, we can conclude that his body still obeys certain biological laws, but even so, that scene with blood feels like a plot hole. In 99% of the scenes where we see the Creeper's insides, his tissues are shown as dead and lifeless, regardless of whether he had eaten recently or not. All his flesh is dead from a physiological standpoint. Evolution and mutation could never have created something like this. This is the work of completely different forces, dark forces, that prevent him from dying. Perhaps long ago he was a human, which is why the remnants of his humanity seem to struggle against these dark forces, though unsuccessfully. Or maybe successfully? Again, we don't know whether he woke up after his last 23-year hibernation or not. But one thing is certain, this creature does not obey the laws of nature or death, which means it cannot be destroyed completely. I hope you learned a bit more about the Creeper today. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and support it with your engagement. It really means a lot to me. See ya!